Without Googling it, what are your favorite NBA pressers top 3 of all time?
Oh, I'm a hooper, so these are there for me.
Yo, do you know him? Okay.
I'm in here. I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we in here talking about practice, man. Practice, not a game, not a game. We talking about practice.
Practice. Yes, that's
Right.
what.
So like, that's the first.
Yeah, that's one of mine.
So that's the first. The second, I mean, it seems like cheating, but it really is. This year, I'm gonna take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat. That's your decision. Like, what makes that worse is Jim Gray's horrible follow up question. And I had a lot of respect for Jim Gray back in the day, like the
Yep.
reporter, right? It was a
Yep.
terrible sort of. The whole thing was terrible, but like
Mm-hmm.
his follow up questions were like, Jim, you can do better than that, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
You can do better. So that's number two. And number three, I don't know if you remember this, but it was a couple post seasons ago when Edwards was like, "Man, we've been sorry for 2 decades. How much longer y'all want us to lose?"
God bless.
So those are the three that stick out. If I had more time, I could find some more classic gems from the '90s and early 2000s. But those are like, bing.
Yep. Those are the good ones. My top 3, practice is definitely in the top 3. I feel like that's a given.
Yeah.
When my daughter was starting cheer season last year, she was hot because some of the girls showing up to practice were not giving it 100%, and she was acting like they were on the field for the homecoming halftime show. And so we're in the car and I'm just listening to her and I'm like her hype girl in that moment. I'm like, yep, I'm just letting her get it all out. And then she stops. And I was like, practice. We talk about practice?
About practice.
And she was like, yeah, mom, I just said that. I was like, practice. So that's got to be one of mine. LeBron going to the Heat is also a given. My other favorite one is after the Nuggets won the chip and they're talking to Joker and he realizes in real time how much time is between now and when the parade is, and you can see he just becomes immediately deflated. He's like, "Oh no, no, I want to go home. I want to
He's
go
ready
home."
to get up out of here.
That man will go down in history as maybe the greatest of all time.
Oh
And
yeah, it's up there.
he treats this shit like he's punching a clock. If you're not talking to him about horses, you ain't talking to him about nothing. And then my all-time favorite, and you already know what franchise it's coming out of.
Grit and grind.
It's unfortunate that I got a guy like Mike Conley who has got 0 technical fouls and cannot seem to get the proper respect from officials. It was a very poorly officiated basketball game. You know, I got a guy like Zach Randolph, the most rugged guy in the game, had 0 free throws. Kawhi Leonard had 19 free throws. I'm not a numbers guy, but that just doesn't quite add up.
I love that you know this word for word.
And then he punctuates, that's like halfway through, right? Yeah, I know this word for word. I got sick at our company retreat last year. My talent for the talent show was going to be to recite Fizz monologue.
That joint was, yeah, he went off, man.
And he goes, take that for data. Pop!
Bow. And then
Well, welcome to Politics as Usual.
politics as usual. We're gonna talk about some fascism, some socialism, all that stuff. We're gonna talk after we talk about Memphis Grizzlies basketball and them getting rid of Taylor Jenkins, the winningest coach in franchise history. It's crazy.
Taylor, if you're listening, we miss you, Zaddy.
Come back.
Come back.
Come back, big homie. I'm gonna put this on camera because I don't care. I cannot wait to be outside this summer. It's been cold. I live in the Northeast. The snow just melted. It was on the ground for like 8 weeks. It was terrible. I was wearing boots just to walk to the gym. I had the shiesty on, and then I had to over the shiesty for like 7 weeks. It was terrible. Okay. Today was 57 degrees. Tomorrow is 62. I can't wait to be outside when the DJ play that new Good Flirts with Baby and Kendrick. And when the ad lib drop, I'm going to be out there with all the fine, beautiful women. I got a platinum plaque in the. I can't wait. Can't wait. Holla
Oh
at
my
me.
God. Yeah, the
We
return of
outside.
spring. I cannot wait to be outside.
Can't wait. It's still cold though. So anyway. We gotta talk about fascism now.
Yeah, let's do it. We should probably set it up for it. This episode, we're going to be talking about a keynote address that Fred and I listened to. I listened to it on a plane when I was going to Vegas for work, and then I sent it to Fred from the plane. The
Don't
fact
get me
that there
started.
are as many people experiencing homelessness in America as they are, it is a choice. It is a choice. Be that as it may. I said, hey man, listen to this. He did, and now we're going to talk about it. Keynote from
I
Robert
have a rant.
Evans. You have a rant about what? Policy choices?
I mean, about that thing, but I.
Robert Evans is a journalist and host of a few different podcasts. The one that I listen to most often is It Could Happen Here. I feel like I've referenced it before. I just really enjoy it. And I think the best way to frame this conversation is with a question for people listening. And I would encourage you to hit pause after I ask this question and then really think about what your answer is, and then you can listen to the rest of the episode. If refusing one oath could change the course of history, would you do it? But there would be a cost to you to refuse it, and no, you don't know what the cost is. That's how I'm going to frame this keynote. It was a speech about a lot of things, so there was a Q&A afterward. Authoritarianism was the topic, but that was not really the theme. The theme was about the moral confrontation that we have to have with ourselves and that we have to be able to gently and productively have with each other right now, but also with a sense of urgency. Because you and I have talked about many times how people have red lines, but those red lines just feel like they get thicker. I feel like we're watching that line get thicker for a lot of people right now, when now is the time to actually make that line real thin. But anyway, before we get into it, we should probably make sure everybody's on the same ground.
Yeah, no, it's just if you haven't listened to it, I would encourage. I think the one that we're referencing was based off of maybe 6, 7, 8 part series. It Could Happen Here, which is just a well researched podcast about what a sort of second civil war would look like, which I think there's need for people to understand, to be able to picture, to be able to imagine. In the same way, I think it's important for people to be able to imagine what a third world war would look like. Right? I think our very limited understanding of history, which in the grand scheme of sort of the American electorate and American consciousness, is not very good to begin with. Right? Even folks who are educated have surface levels idea of history and militarism and warfare. There's this huge thing that happened to end the Second World War, and it's called a nuclear bomb. And so I think sometimes we think about what a third world military conflict looks like in terms of that, right? And there are sort of multiple countries, including our adversaries, who have those. And so I think sometimes we think, oh, okay, it's land, it's air, it's sea, it's combat, it's troops, it's high technology weapons. And that's just not the case, right? Because if that's, everyone can just drop a bomb and we would all die. And so I think in a lot of ways, I don't know if we'll get into this, but there are people much smarter than you and I who study this in a contemporary standpoint historically, who say the Third World War already started. Right? It started when Russia invaded Ukraine in February. I think that was of 2023, and we begin to see sort of what an actual sort of defined third world war would look like, with many proxy wars across the globe. Right, if you want to be an informed citizen and get a sense of what's happening now, and what many people would argue, including I think you and I, is to come unless we sort of mass mobilize, is to listen to that podcast, to those early episodes in particular, and get a sense of what Robert Evans is talking about. Fascinating listening.
We'll put the link to the episode in the show notes. I'll summarize everything so you don't have to stop and go listen to it and then come back here. This is a high level recap. The state increasingly treats protest or any type of dissent as violence, equates the two of them. Distinction without a difference. Peaceful protest, so that's number one. Number two, peaceful protest does not guarantee safety. Number three, policing is treated as sacred and insulated from accountability. Number four, mutual aid and neighborhood defense are emerging and sustainable networks for resistance. Number five, a general strike may be the only non-violent leverage with any real weight that we have. And number six, educated, reasonable people rationalize compliance with authoritarianism. And finally, the real danger that we are in right now is the moment of hesitation. It is that 24-hour window. Another way of putting that is everybody is waiting around going, how do we know when it's time? It's the scariest thing to me is how do we know when it's time to strike? How do we know when it's time to build mutual aid and community defense networks? It's now. How do we know when we are living under authoritarianism? It's now. Like there isn't going to be like a like Amber Alert style communication system to come over and tell you guys, okay, we've officially transitioned from democracy into authoritarianism. Whoever you thought you were going to be in this time, just morph into that person now. No, baby, it's right now. It's right now. That's the frame. And we can talk about the story that he uses to anchor the whole thing because the story itself is really uncomfortable because it feels very familiar. You want me to recap that really quick, or do you want to talk about Milton Mayer?
Go there.
Okay. There's a story that Robert Evans tells in this speech. It's the emotional center of the speech. It's not about like the combat theater of World War II. It's a story from post World War II Germany. A German engineer, can't remember if he was like chemical engineer or bioengineer, but he was an engineer, and he was asked to swear loyalty to the Third Reich in 1935. He decides to take the oath because his rationalization at that point was, if I don't take the oath, I don't know what's going to happen. If I refuse, if I say, nope, I'm not going to swear, I don't know what they're going to do to me. And it's very possible that I won't be around to help people. If I do take the oath, I'm only taking it externally, but internally I know who I am, I know what I'm about, and I can stay around and help people. So when he's telling this story, he says that ultimately the world was not lost when the Third Reich took over Germany. He said the world was lost the day that he took that oath, and he was the one who lost the world. Well, do you think that individual refusals, individual acts of resistance, do you think they actually matter? This is not a rhetorical question. Yeah. Follow-up question. Does it feel to you that in stories like this, when people are using these as examples, does it sound like somebody is arguing for moral purity? Or does it sound like they are calling for very early collective outrage? Because that point feels very salient as we're looking at establishment Democrats and progressive Democrats in primary races. You picking up what I'm putting down?
I'm picking it up. I do think there's value in neglecting to take oaths, particularly if you don't believe in them. So that's just a clear yes to me. I don't think that's a moral purity test. I try to strike a balance because, however, I think much of what we do from an electoral basis within many sectors of the Democratic Party is try to play politics on a playing field that hasn't existed this entire century. It's one that has a rules-based order that half the population does not acknowledge, does not abide by, doesn't believe in. And what rules-based orders require is for people to have a shared fundamental understanding, belief, and acceptance of said rules. It requires those same people within a society to recognize, acknowledge, and be unafraid to shame and dismiss people who fail to abide by those rules. And those are two fundamentally different things. Like, yep. It's two-step. And so we don't have sort of a shared baseline acknowledgement of what rules are. And people just don't get shamed enough anymore. When you've got sort of a failure to do both of those, you end up with chaos. I think what a lot of this comes back to me, I did not watch the State of the Union.
Me
and
either.
I won't. Yeah, I won't go back and watch it. There's nothing for me to, learn from that. But I did sort of read plenty of places where there was a snippet of the guy in the Oval Office basically saying that the 3 conservative justices who voted against his tariffs were a disgrace to the party and to the country, to their families, something kind of along those lines, right? And sort of baseline stuff that we don't have a ruling order of individuals with any sort of power or collective platform that will challenge. I was listening to the Gab Fest, Slate's Political Gab Fest, which is a very left leaning podcast, yesterday. One of the things they highlighted was at the beginning, oh, well, Trump, embellished some things about the economy and about, where America is. And they said, well, didn't Biden do the same thing? We all know that presidents embellish records, embellish realities and truths, but we're so far past any level of objectivity where you equate what this president has done with any previous president in the last half century, in
Why
which
are
you
we even
try to
asking that
legitimize
question?
that. To me, it was another example of just sort of a core corporate media structure trying to normalize something and to bring it sort of full circle. We tend to go back to this all the time, and I'm going to go back to it as long as we see sort of things taking place the way that they are now. I just think people don't fully have an understanding, an appreciation for what, the Italy of 1925 or 26 was like. They don't have
Mm-hmm.
a full appreciation or understanding of what the Germany of 1933 was like. And one of the things that folks don't really realize is our collective sort of conversation, the national media, whatever, is really based off this modern day Gestapo trying to push out immigrants from predominantly sort of Central South American countries. This is happening for people of Haitian descent. This is happening for people of West and East African descent, right? Any people of color, like you're not hearing that, right? But it's happening. And this is not just the let's get the Mexicans or the Nicaraguans or the Guatemalans out of here. And there's a very thin line there between, we're gonna get out the people who are here illegal to we're gonna get the people out of here who are, rapists and causing violence to we're just gonna get all the people out of here who don't fit our idea or our conception of what America is. And that to close the loop, I guess, the essential aspect of that is, the white moderate. And the white moderate's ability and understanding to be right now to be comfortable and complicit as if these are normal times, right? This is not George W. Bush starting an unpopular war to seize
Mm-hmm.
oil.
Mm-hmm.
This is not Ronald Reagan characterizing people as welfare queens. Those things are bad in and of itself, right? And I, by no means, please don't get me wrong, this is not me supporting or casting a sense of nostalgia on George W. Bush or George H.W. or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama. But there is sort of the different level of democracy that fundamentally everyone before this president believed in. Now, that still leads to colonialism and militarism, right? But we're seeing a little bit more of a blatant attempt to dehumanize and destabilize world orders. This is a really long answer to your question. But to me, all of those different things tie into an understanding of these times are not normal. And therefore, we need upper middle class, educated people to ring a much louder drum and say, hey, this is not normal. What are we going to do about it? Let's do something about it. Because I still think there's so many people looking towards these phantom elections in November saying, hey, this is our chance to hold people accountable. And I'm just saying, man, even if Democrats were to quote unquote win the midterms, you still got 2 years after this. And who's to say what happens between now and then in terms of voting booths, police, viability, world destabilization? Like, folks got to wake up and stop being comfortable in their houses with their meal kits and their dogs.
I need him to get a longer memory too, because I don't know what type of Democratic Party they think. Like, let's assume Democrats sweep in November, right? That would be great. It's not going to fix anything, but I could like unpucker my butt a little bit.
Just a bit.
We're essentially looking for a sweep from the same party that finds a way to be powerless to govern, regardless of how many of the three co-equal branches of government they dominate at any given time. When people are looking to elections or looking online, being like, guys, this thing happened. Is this it? Is this the thing that's going to push us over the edge? Is it time? What do we do? You're asking the wrong person if you're asking anybody other than yourself. I need us to turn that question inward. We don't want to do that because it's uncomfortable, but this is the conversation that needs to happen. All 5 of you who are watching this, I need you to pause this video and sit in a place where you can be relaxed and quiet for a few minutes. Ask yourself, what am I willing to do to be the one who saves not humanity? We don't need to think that grandiose, but like when you say isn't somebody going to do something? Turn that question inward and go, what if I'm that person? What can I do? What am I willing to do? What am I not willing to do? Be honest with yourself. Sit in that discomfort. Understand why you feel uncomfortable or not, or understand what energizes you and why, and then move forward. We need to like sit and have an honest self-inventory and understand where we think we fit in right now. And then there's a concept called like anarchist calisthenics. And I think it's an idea that's gained a lot of traction recently. But the idea, like very oversimplified, is this: doing really small, seemingly insignificant acts of like some type of resistance to authority or rules or anything like that every day. It's calisthenics. Over time, it builds the muscle, right? So that over time, you are able to engage in larger, more meaningful acts of resistance because you have consistently over time and in like you built like moments of micro trust with yourself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's something we all, and I include myself in this too, got to do. When I was listening to him retell that story about Milton Mayer, I sat on that plane in the dark at night and thought to myself, there have been a lot of moments where I could have done something and I didn't do it. I didn't do it because I was scared or overwhelmed, feeling resentful, or because I didn't think it would matter, because I thought it would matter a lot and it would screw up my entire life. And I had to sit there and do a self-inventory and be like, would I take a different action today? Why would I take a different action today? Because things feel more exigent. Is it too late? I don't know. Only one way to find out.
I have an idea where people can start.
Please.
I went to deliver something to a client of mine yesterday. She wasn't there, so I dropped it off. She lives in condos, lots of densely populated things. You walk inside and there are 4 different levels. There are, 4 entrances on each level to different apartments, condos, whatever. I'm doing this thing now where I count how many cameras I see when I approach residences, whatever. And I don't know if people understand this, but if no one's ever told you this, I want to be the first one to tell you. Your Ring doorbell is going to be a part of murdering people, and it might be a part of you getting murdered as well.
Yep.
I think back to the story that Evans, recounted, the keynote, and I think back to the stories that I've heard and the many, many, many more that exist that you, I, and many others have never heard of throughout Germany and other places. And one of the things I think we're going to have to reconcile incredibly quickly is that you could not truly have an underground network taking humans that the state is trying to violently kill now because all of you want to have a freaking camera so you can see when your packages are delivered. Like,
Or
you could not, or it would be incredibly difficult to build a network that frees women who are in dangerous domestic abuse situations. It would be incredibly difficult to free people who are being sort of trafficked against their will by billionaire pedophiles who are still out here roaming free. It would be different to sort of build a network that takes people who are being threatened with state sanctioned violence and potentially death because of the color of their skin, right? Even if you say you don't put this stuff to the cloud or you don't have a working subscription, we've seen that with the disappearance of a very famous person's mother, whether or not you have a working subscription is irrelevant. Whether or not you give consent for this information, for the surveillance to be shared with the state, is irrelevant. They're going to do it anyway. So one of the larger questions we can ask, especially in lieu of Ring having a little bit of backlash from their Super Bowl, is what are you willingly giving, right, to the state in an effort to oppress yourself and people around you and you love and other people on the margins? And what are you getting in return for that? Right? Like when I dropped off this package yesterday, these are condos. There's an outdoor balcony on the second floor that has a camera on it. What do you have a camera there for? You need Usain Bolt in his prime level of athleticism to hop up there. And even then, you probably still need a ladder, right? Like, I'm not sure when we created a world in this country to where everyone felt like they needed surveillance on their own home and what that surveillance was protecting them from. But what we've all kind of collectively got to the point to which we've just accepted for whatever reason is this concept and this idea that for me to feel a little bit safer, I am going to give my government and these huge social media platforms, these technological platforms, don't believe in democracy, don't believe in government guided by people. They are authoritative fascists in and of themselves, and they have played a critical role in the authoritative fascist state we have now. And when this is all said and done, they should be brought before tribunals in the same way we brought criminals before the Hague after the Second World War. I'm saying that wrong. That's a different conversation. Those are all things that we've given them power to do. And what have we gotten in return? We can see when we got a package left at our door. Is that who we are as a people? Is that how simplistic we are? That somebody took my new Opa nail polish gel and mascara in my new video game, and so therefore I'm gonna give ICE the ability to see if my neighbors are bringing in people who are undocumented.
Alternative.
I'm sorry.
Alternative. No, no, no. I'm with you. I have cameras on my house because I have a daughter
Fair.
and she's at the age where it makes sense for me to have it. However, I hear you and I don't disagree. And the contract between Ring and Flock, and the contracts that don't even need to exist between Ring and local, state, and federal law enforcement. Here's an alternative for people who are like, I can't not have cameras, or I'm not comfortable not having them, but I also don't want this. Buy cameras that are not from those companies and set up your own mesh network at home. I know it sounds crazy. You don't have to be a genius engineer to do it. There are tutorials online where it can be done very, very cheaply. People should have local mesh networks set up when we experience longer term grid outages, mass cell phone outages. Like there's still a way for you to safely get in touch with people. There are ways around it if you're willing to do it. But it starts with small things. Like if you cannot just pull your Ring camera off your front door and chuck it tomorrow, maybe you go and look at all the privacy settings on your social media, on your cameras, on email, on your phone. Start by those small things that make it really difficult for people.
Mm,
And then build it up from there. I'm okay with telling people, I need you to be here, but if you're here,
yeah,
then it's okay to be here tomorrow as long as we keep moving in this direction.
that's great.
I don't know, but I'm also a white lady, so it's easy for me to say that shit.
No, no, I went all the way there. I appreciate the balance.
You like tell me when I'm being a white moderate.
I appreciate the balance. I mean, there was a world not too long ago that you and I remember where there weren't cameras, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a part of me that feels like, all right, that's unreasonable and unfair to ask of people. The other part, I know this firmly from being political campaign 2026. I mean, even 10 years ago, there was not this proliferation of video doorbells, right?
It's true.
Like anytime you walk outside now, you should have the expectation that everything you do and say is being recorded and reported back to your government.
Absolutely.
Um, and that was not the case, 18 years ago. Do we just accept that as a means of modern society? I think part of where I go, it goes back to a lot of these tech companies. They went around and got a whole lot of government funding and government bailouts under the guise of making the world a better place. Besides being able to talk to people cheaply and more efficiently across the world, like I just don't know what has improved fundamentally about life in the past 18 years. It still takes the same amount of time to get from Los Angeles to New York as it did in 1975. We've had some medical and scientific advancements for sure. Houses are still unaffordable and things are still more expensive. We're not growing healthier food at a more efficient or economic clip. We're not better educating our children than we were 25 years ago. Like, they sold us a bill of goods and have done nothing but pit us against us. And one of the reasons I say, hey, I feel like we need to bring these tech companies before criminal tribunals is one of the things I'll never get over. And I'm so happy Robert Evans mentioned this in his keynote because it's also one of the things that was mentioned in this podcast called, I think, The Long Shadow, where it talks about sort of the internet
Mm-hmm.
and social media culture. Facebook literally knew that there were groups in Myanmar who were using their platform to spread propaganda for a genocide. and they promoted it and they pushed it and they made the explicit decision to continue to promote this propaganda because it was good for their bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
That is criminal.
Knowingly allowed accounts to proliferate misinformation that ultimately led to violent regime change in South America. Why isn't every single person who worked for Cambridge Analytica and Facebook who had knowledge of that at that time in jail
Should be
right now?
should be behind bars. You mentioned this in your outline. I mean, so to the peaceful protest, he mentions in terms of sort of the state, already labeling dissent as violence.
You go ahead and set this up, but you know this is my favorite thing to talk
Yeah,
about.
I think the one thing we don't have a appreciation for is that like nonviolence requires an audience. And not only does nonviolence require an audience, it requires a monolithic audience. And what I mean by that is nonviolence creates a spectacle by which you have an expectation that there is a reasonable person or entity who is conveying what is happening to a reasonable set of people who have a shared truth. Nonviolence in India in the 30s, 40s, and 50s was a reasonable tactic because there was a baseline understanding of a sort of independent press who would report what was happening with a baseline level of fact and truth and so on and so forth. Nonviolence as a tactic was incredibly viable as an organizing tactic in Jim Crow South because we had this thing called television. It was a new medium. And there was sort of a universal understanding amongst the people who were sort of consuming that television that what they were seeing happening was actually happening, which we can't say that people believe when they see nowadays. But two, right? There was an understanding that if we get these images of this violence happening to us who are being nonviolent, fighting for very fundamental constitutional rights, out to the rest of the country to see, that outrage will lead to action. And I don't know how viable such an approach would be nowadays. One, because we don't have a monolithic audience, right? There's not a large enough contingent of Americans who sit down and watch the 6 o'clock news now as it was 60 years ago, right?
Oh,
You
it's like a
you
shared cultural experience. Yeah,
like
yeah, I'm with you.
when Bull Connor pulled out fire hoses and dogs,
Sure.
against
Yeah, yeah.
nonviolent teenagers in right, like there was a reasonable expectation, and Fred Shuttleworth and C.T. Vivian and Martin Luther King and other folks knew that would be on the 6 o'clock news in San Bernardino, California that night, right?
Mhm.
And that was one of the reasons it was so impactful. I'm not saying you can't be nonviolent nowadays. What I'm saying, the audience that is so critical to that being a valuable organizing tactic simply does not exist anymore. And so that has to be a part of the calculation in terms of how you approach nonviolence versus violence. And I know you're going to take the rest of this, so I don't need to talk any further about it.
I think before I veer off and talk about the problem with peaceful protest, before I make myself totally unemployable, the paradox to me in nonviolence is that if we look empirically, I'm very open to being wrong about this. I don't think I am. If we look empirically at the history of effective nonviolence, it has assumed, almost paradoxically, that in order for it to be successful, violence must still be present. Now, why is that? The reason is nonviolence only looks like the tactic that it is when it has a contrast, a stark, inhumane contrast right next to it. Someone has to be the villain or the monster in that story, and oftentimes nonviolence is the tactic that exposes it. So people who are saying, "Oh, we just need a mass nonviolent protest in this country," like there's another No Kings protest scheduled at the end of March, and I'm
Why are
sitting
we
here
doing this?
going, "For what?"
Why are we doing this?
I'm going to get on a whole, but between the last one and this one, what has happened? What has
Call them out.
Indivisible, what have they done as an organization to keep people engaged and mobilized? And I'm sure they'll be like, oh, there's individual chapters, but people who are saying, oh, there just needs to be like a national mass nonviolent sort of protest and uprising. You only view that as nonviolent. The state right now, the federal government, and most of your state governments and a lot of your county governments and your local governments, your metro governments, depending on where you are, but for damn sure the federal government right now views the silliness of a No Kings protest as violence. If you go outside right now and stand on public property and exercise your First Amendment right, if you are exercising it in a way that paints this administration in anything other than a magnanimous, like alpha male light, that is violence to them. I need people to start internalizing this. And so if all protest, if all dissent against fascism, against authoritarianism is viewed by the fascists as violence, then what is a nonviolent movement truly? Is that even a scenario worth entertaining? My argument is no. There are acts that are inherently nonviolent that are resistance that we can be doing. And we've said it a million times, we'll continue to say it again, setting up mutual aid networks, being in your community, making sure that people have enough to eat, they have somewhere to sleep, they've got medicine, they've got rides to the doctor, to school, they've got protection from fucking ICE. That is all nonviolent stuff. Right now it's low risk, it's high impact, it's nonviolent. What we don't have time for right now, what it is too fucking late for, are mass demonstrations that are just about saying, you guys shouldn't be doing that. This is not okay. We don't have any kings in this country.
This isn't who we are.
We have always been, since that man from Spain fucked around and ended up in the West Indies. This is who we are. We can choose to be different. That is one of the most controversial parts of his keynote, because the argument is that the state labels any type of dissent as violent, and they do right now.
Yeah.
February 27th, 2026. What you and I are engaging in right now is considered an act of violence against this administration. So we're abundantly clear, just to frame it exactly. Okay? So if this is violence, imagine what everything else is like. So this is all, it's dissent, it's violence. Your behavior does not determine targeting. So the next time Tim Walz gets up in front of a camera and says, stay peaceful, don't take the bait, which is a fucking wild thing to say when Renee Good and Alex Preddy were citizens in his state. Please understand, their behavior was not anything that would have reasonably warranted a use of force. So behavior does not determine targeting. What behavior could a 6-month-old infant have displayed that would have justified a flashbang in the car that their parents were driving? Help me understand. This don't take the bait framing shifts the blame and the burden of proof on civilians. We have to shut that narrative down first in our own head. This idea that there's a proper way to do this, a respectable way to do this. The only respectable way to fight for your freedom is to fight for it. You have to kill the cop inside your head first. I mean that metaphorically. And then you can start to educate others around you and help other people around you come to the understanding that all we're doing is policing ourselves and policing each other. If this makes people uncomfortable to listen to, I need you to know that I hear you and I understand. I am holding space for you to be like, Kat, this makes me uncomfortable. I don't like thinking about this. It scares me. Me too. But this is where we are.
Yeah.
Look around you, my love. Are peaceful tactics still effective constraints on power right now? If it doesn't really look like it, then you're ready to go, okay, one step at a time, but we have to start considering, what do we do next? How do we prepare ourselves? How do we defend ourselves? How do we defend each other? You tell me, Fred, if I'm being an accelerationist about this, because one of the things that scares me as a leftist with not all the privilege in the world, but like a decent amount of it, is like, this is me critiquing people on my side ideologically. We are real quick to read Karl Marx one fucking time and then immediately rush to insist that everybody be sacrificed as part of the revolution. I'm not trying to do that here, but do you personally believe that there is a form of peaceful protest that can meaningfully limit state power right now in this country? It is not rhetorical. I am really asking.
Yeah. No, because we don't have an administration that believes in peaceful protests. His cronies in the federal government don't believe that any level of dissent should be honored as viable dissent. So if you get a large enough platform in which you say this guy and this administration are anti-democratic, anti-freedom, and so forth, right? You are and characterized in some sort of way as being violent. Now, I don't want to be hyperbolic in that way, but like if 6 months from now, out of some make miracle, there are 100,000 people subscribe to this, there are going to be clicks. When we're on the phone, the connection probably won't be the same, and there'll be knocks at the door, and so like I say no because we're not living in a normal world. We're not living in a normal, regular, colonialist, high level surveillance
Yeah.
of everyday American citizens in the Patriot Act, right?
Yeah.
So for there to be a viable path to peaceful protest, you have to live in a world and have an administration and a government that believes in the right for there to be peaceful protest.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have that.
Fred, if appeals to our better angels and mass visibility of nonviolent action is not enough anymore, then what leverage do we have?
I did not plan on going here, but I'm going to go here. I think we need interconnected groups of community that have shared values and understandings, whether that's faith, whether it's, sports, hobbies, whatever. Fundamental considerations of human beings and people gathering around those shared beliefs in consistent cornerstones whereby we organize, pool resources, build systems and structures for feeding, sheltering, housing, and defending people. And we run those as our own little paramilitary, paranation state organizations. Insofar as in the event such a defense, such support, such networks are needed, we have the calculus and the repetitions and the experience to simply go about enacting those systems and distributing those resources in ways that don't require us to flex muscles we've never worked out.
My brother in Christ, are you becoming an anarcho-syndicalist in front of my
I think I'm just living up to my first name.
look, you don't have to say that. You don't have to cop to it. I understand you're still appearing on people's financial disclosures for the next several quarters. So like
I am.
if you gotta say they think it's one way but it ain't that way, like I get it, but I'm gonna tell you what it sounds like to me.
We gotta stop. One of my favorite quotes from The Wire is can't quote The Wire without the curse words. Avon tells Stree, "What I tell you about playing the fucking away games?" That is a series full of quotes that you can write a dissertation on. But
Yep.
that one, as I get older, sticks out. I can't tell you what episode it comes from, but if you've seen the series, you've seen it. It's like, yo, man, if you believe in actual freedom, if you believe in democracy, if you believe in community, if you believe in creating the world as it should be and working towards that every day, hey, man, at some point we gotta stop playing these away games because that's
Yep.
all we've been playing. I want to see what it's like to play a home game. Just one. Just one.
Yeah. I mean my answer was gonna be general strike before we get
There we go. Yes.
we can do porque no los dos, like we could do both. We could do both. I'm with you. I've got stickers in my water bottle that meant I got questioned going through airport security earlier this week that very clearly state that I am with you on that point of
I'm trying to start a
interconnected
church. That's
networks.
all. Yeah.
You're on a man, you will stop at nothing to make sure that I walk through the doors of a church one more time before I die.
Of course.
We'll get to it. The religion episode of politics is coming. It is coming.
It's coming.
For now, this is going to be yet another episode where I continue to advocate for people being about a general strike. This is also something that Robert Evans says in his keynote. And to be fair, like Robert Evans is an exceptional writer. I think he's a great journalist. I think he's pretty good on podcasts. I like reading his writing more. However, I
Mm.
will say the man leads the witness like almost nobody.
Big time. I
Begs
mean,
the
damn it.
question like almost nobody, which is like what I did earlier too, so that's fine. But what leverage does exist? He's like, oh, general strike, and I'm like, yep, me too. But he like rhetorically already got us there before. Anyway, that being said, I do genuinely believe that the 1 day general strike that we saw in Minneapolis is something that other cities need to and are planning to repeat, to build that muscle, to go from one city 1 day to multiple cities 1 day to multiple cities for 2 days and then a week and then so on and so forth. And so if you don't come from a firsthand or like generational experience of organized labor, so if you've never been part of a union, you don't have any family members who are really active in unions or anything like that, thinking about organized labor unions might seem like an antiquated like turn of the century concept, or a concept that's only applied to the trades, right?
Mm.
Skilled labor. First of all, fuck that phrase. All labor is skilled. There is no
All
such
of it.
thing. There is no such thing as unskilled labor. You can take that shit somewhere else. Also, a general strike is not symbolic just because you are not part of a union. In fact, it is the joining together of unorganized labor and organized labor together for a full interruption of commerce. An interruption of commerce is also, to the state and to the corporate state, considered an act of violence. That is an act of violence that they respond to. That is an act of violence that they will bend to every time.
100%.
It is real. It has real implications. We don't even need the entire country to do it. We need a very small percentage of people to temporarily bring this country to its knees. And then we are the ones who help it recover together, right? When demands are met, it's the point of a strike. It requires unions, it requires infrastructure, it requires non-organized labor, it requires mutual aid. We will know that it is effective when it becomes criminalized, but when it becomes criminalized is not the point at which it stops. In fact, it only becomes more powerful after it is no longer legal. Going back to the beginning when I was talking about anarchist calisthenics, this is part of that. If we can go from one city 1 day to a few cities 1 day, all of this under a legal framework, we build the muscle, the bravery, the courage, the muscle memory to do it and again, or for more prolonged periods of time, we're able to sustain one another through it, even after it becomes so-called criminal, which is when it really, really becomes powerful. But it does involve real sacrifice. It's not easy. Ask anybody who is a current union member right now who has ever been on strike.
Yeah.
Nobody likes to go on strike. You don't get 100% of your pay. It is not
Mm-hmm.
fun. Contract negotiations can be difficult. I think correct me if I'm wrong, you left before we started unionizing at our old
Yeah.
place?
Yeah.
Okay. That shit is not fun. It feels good and it works, but it's not fun. Neither is striking. Anyway, here's a question. Pause if you want to. If a serious union-backed general strike were to be called in your city right now, so they said May 1st, I'll pick a random May 1st, May Day, the real Labor Day. There's a general strike in Baltimore. There's a general strike in Memphis. It's backed by unions. The unions are going to support their non-organized brothers and sisters. There's a strike fund set up. We're going to be able to feed people. We got pantries going. Would you participate? Before anybody rushes to be like, absolutely, stop. I want you to really ask yourself, would you participate? And in a scenario where you're saying, yes, I absolutely would participate, and there's very little hesitation, I want you to stop again. And I want you to ask yourself, in this scenario, how much of the preparation work was I helping with? Or were you just waiting for somebody to say, we've got everything we need to do a general strike, are you in? See, now the steps that we need to take are starting to become concretized. Concretized? Is that a word? It's becoming solid in our minds. I know, it's 7:30. It's been a hell of a week. But,
We have so much work to do as communities, as people. I think one of the more effective things of the two-party system this century is this sense that so much of the onus of all kind of societal change is on these people who we elect. And I think the reality of any societal change, any political shift, any new era in politics any revolution, big or small, is the people. And I think what folks have done so incredibly well is propagandize that from actual sort of individuals who are willing to stand up to sort of tyranny and mistreatment and corporate greed to this sort of abstract idea of the people, whereby we exercise what that power actually means every 2 years by pressing some buttons in a booth. And
Yep.
that's not what it's ever meant. That's not what it was intended to mean when this country was founded. I am going to continue to say this, especially in this year of America 250, is that one, America is an idea, right? It's not a group of people. It is an idea. And it is an idea that this country has often failed to live up to. And so, therefore, in order to sort of bring about a country that purports to even remotely live up to those ideas, right? Which is what I think real and true patriots do, which is what I think people who want to see a more equitable world are committed to. One has to be committed to two things. One is a broad sort of scope and understanding of what it means to be included in that quote unquote the people, and two, an understanding and appreciation that bringing about the policies and the systems that require this institution to live up to what it put on paper is going to be a little bit of violence. That could be a general strike, it could be prolonged general strike, it can be other things which I may or may not be advocating for here. But there's not a world in which we go to the polls in November and vote for a bunch of people with D's by their name, and suddenly, stop being pulled over by unmarked vehicles and people with face coverings over their face being detained at ICE facilities without due process, and everything goes back to quote unquote normal. And I think that's the aspect that people don't understand, right? Is that
Mm-hmm.
there's no normal to go back to, right? You voted for him 3 times.
I mean, run this like an improv troupe. Yes, and yes, in this scenario where we push all the D buttons up and down the ballot and we wake up the next morning and everything's better, by better, we could, what is the position from the
Oh, it's
Democrats
better.
right now about DHS and ICE funding? It's they should have more training. They should be wearing body cams. They shouldn't be able to wear masks. So it's we're fine with you carrying out this state sanctioned violence. We want you to do it in a more transparent way. That's the policy difference. There is no going back. That's it. That's all I want to say.
There it is. The emperor has no clothes.
There are sections of this keynote that we probably don't have time for today and also have covered in one form or another. The other is a whole section on armed conflict, which we've covered a little bit in this episode. We covered it more extensively in the last episode, where we talked about Second Amendment. You go far enough left, you get your guns back. Go
You
listen to
better.
that if you haven't already. And there is a really important, because the woman who does the Q&A with Robert Evans and who introduces him was a former political prisoner in South Africa during the apartheid
Mm-hmm.
regime. And so there's a little bit of back and forth in these questions, and they talk about what happens afterward. So when we win, what happens afterward, right? I studied in college. My capstone project was about a museum and other types of public installations as methods of truth and reconciliation and healing in post-authoritarian societies. But anyway, and we can talk about that at some point. But there's one more question that I have for people. But fast forward to when we win, the very next day, we all wake up and we're like, our long national nightmare is over. Yeah, I knew you'd appreciate that. If
You
y'all don't
know
know
me
why,
so well.
if y'all don't know why we're laughing, go look it up.
You gotta look that up
Uh,
yourself.
our long national nightmare is over. When this is over, ask yourself, you can only prioritize one immediately. Do you prioritize justice? Do you prioritize restoration? Or do you prioritize stability? And the answer to that question doesn't necessarily, this isn't a BuzzFeed quiz. It doesn't tell you what kind of person you are or what role you're going to play. It's just an important thing to sit with, which also brings us back to where we started this episode. There's a few different ways to sum this up. You will likely have your own way, Fred. My way of summing this up for people is that You do not have to decide today that from this day forward, you are a revolutionary. Even though I do love that Chairman Fred called us all to remember out loud to ourselves and to each other that we are revolutionaries.
There you go.
If you're not there yet, that's all right, right? We don't have to be revolutionaries. You do need to decide who you are. That's what I think the TLDR of this episode is. You don't need to be a revolutionary today. You do need to decide who you are.
I think people have to make their decisions based off their own consciousness and where they currently are. I will sort of sum things up with a little history lesson. We did not go far enough at the end of the Civil War. There's a guy who wanted the presidency so bad that he took federal troops out of the South and ended Reconstruction just so he could keep hold of the presidency. That doesn't happen if you don't immediately bring them before criminal tribunals and punish them, which in 1865, 66, 67 ish would have been to hang them. Mm-hmm. That is what should have happened to Confederate leaders. Stop. That is not heritage. It is not culture. There was the United States of America, and at that time they were the Confederate States of America. And I don't calling it a civil war is nuts. They went and tried to make their own country. You are a foreign traitor committing treason against your country. Mm-hmm. And it should have been punished accordingly, right? And I say that because the only reason we had these, you built statues and you built museums, and the only reason these things continued until the 20th century, and the reasons we do these things now is, I'll put you this way, and then I'm going to shut the hell up. There ain't no Adolf Hitler drives in Berlin, bro.
Oh.
And yet we got Jefferson Davis highways. I'm saying, man.
We got Nathan Bedford Forrest State Park here in Tennessee. Not just a Confederate general, but a Grand Dragon in the Ku Klux Klan.
Ku Klux Klan.
Yep, and his bus sat in the Capitol. You're right. That's it.
What are you doing for fun this weekend? We have fun. Then we had this real serious conversation for like an hour.
What am I doing for fun this weekend? I'll tell you, I'm sleeping. I was traveling for work all this week and came back and then continued to work for the rest of the week. It's also softball season for my daughter, so we are either at practices or soon games every night. I'm just tired, you know. I can't wait to be outside. Yeah, it'll be nice. But like,
but yes.
What am I doing? I'm playing a stupid little cozy game on Switch where I'm the proprietor of like an occult oddities shop, and I'm gonna eat takeout and I'm gonna sleep for probably 12 hours tonight. What are you doing this weekend?
You know, no, absolutely not. I have not taken a single day off this month, which is terrible. And I don't say that with a badge of honor. It's very terrible. Don't be a jerk. I'm talking.
Badass, my dog.
I'm speaking.
It's racist to interrupt my co-host.
Right, I'm speaking, Mr. Vice President.
Continue.
What the hell was I talking about? I haven't taken a day off. That's not a badge of honor. It's actually pretty stupid, at least for me, right? I'm not saying if anybody out here listening hasn't taken a day off this month, I'm not calling you stupid. I'm saying that I need to actually care and take care of myself and stop being just a pawn in this capitalistic machine. And so I'm going to take some magnesium, watch a movie from the year 1969, probably order a takeout for 28 hours, which would be a hard reset for my life. Yeah. And then I will go back to writing something about how America is an idea and my musings on love and why I can't stop listening to this new Baby Keem album. So that's my weekend.
I just need to know that at some point you and the wife over the weekend are going to be in matching onesies, throwing it back to Baby Keem in the living room together.
I got a platinum plaque and a cook.
Bless.
That's it.
That's it. That's the show.
That's politics as well.
Be great.